I'm Madeline Mitchell, 32. And I never expected success would make my family turn on me. When my mom, Patricia, and brother Kyle showed up at my apartment demanding $50,000 for his can't-miss business venture, I was speechless. My immediate no triggered my mother's fury. "After everything I sacrificed for you," she screamed. Their ultimatum hung in the air. "You owe this family." As they stormed out, I wondered, do I really owe them my hard-earned success? Before I dive into this nightmare, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button if you've ever dealt with family financial drama, and subscribe for more real-life stories about navigating difficult family relationships. Trust me, this story gets wild, and you'll want to stick around to see how I finally stood up for myself. To understand why my mom's demand hit me so hard, you need to know where I came from. I grew up in a small Midwest town called Riverview, where most people lived paycheck to paycheck, including us. My dad, William, left when I was 10, leaving Mom to raise Kyle and me alone. At least, that's the story she always told everyone who would listen. From the beginning, there was a clear favorite in our house. Kyle, 2 years younger than me, could do no wrong in Mom's eyes. When he failed math, it was because the teacher had it out for him. When he was caught shoplifting at 15, it was just a phase and all boys do it. But me, I brought home straight A's, and Mom would say, "Don't get a big head about it." I worked at the local diner after school, and Mom called me obsessed with money. The double standard was painful, but became my normal. I remember one particular night when I was 16 sitting at our kitchen table, surrounded by college brochures. I'd been researching scholarship opportunities for hours. "Why are you wasting time on that?" Mom asked, walking past with a basket of Kyle's laundry. "We've got your college fund." That was news to me. "We do. That's great." 6 months later, when Kyle dropped out of high school and decided he wanted to get his GED and try community college, my college fund mysteriously became Kyle's Fresh Start Fund. He lasted 1 semester before quitting. My fund was gone. That was the moment I realized no one was going to hand me anything in life. I worked 2 jobs my senior year of high school, weekends at the diner and weeknights stocking at the local grocery store. I applied for every scholarship I could find, wrote essays until my fingers cramped, and somehow scraped together enough to attend State University with their computer science program. Those college years were brutal. Mom rarely called except to tell me about Kyle's latest breakthrough or to ask if I could send money home. I lived on ramen, worked at the campus IT help desk, and took extra credits each semester to graduate early. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not once did my family visit campus. When I graduated with honors, Mom came for the ceremony, but spent most of it talking about how Kyle was finally finding his path with some multi-level marketing scheme selling protein powders. After college, I moved to Chicago and started at the bottom of a tech company, Digital Sphere. Entry-level coding, long hours, tiny apartment shared with 2 roommates. But I was good at what I did. Really good. I climbed from junior developer to mid-level in 3 years, then to team lead. Just last month, I was promoted to senior developer with a substantial salary increase, more money than anyone in my family had ever seen. For the first time in my life, I felt financially secure. I bought my first apartment, nothing fancy, but mine in a decent neighborhood with good security. I started a retirement account. I even took a real vacation to California, posting a few beach photos on Instagram, my first non-work trip ever. The promotion announcement went up on LinkedIn. I didn't think much about it, it's just what people do in the professional world. My profile is set to public, like most people in tech. I didn't even consider that my family would see it. 3 days after that LinkedIn update, my doorbell rang. No warning, no text asking if I was home. Just Mom and Kyle standing there with expectant smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Maddie, Mom exclaimed, using the childhood nickname I'd asked her to drop years ago. We came to congratulate you in person. I should have closed the door right then. But some part of me, that little girl still desperate for parental approval, let them in. They commented on everything, how fancy my furniture was. It was from IKEA, how extravagant my TV was, mid-range at best, how I must be rolling in it now. Then came the bomb, Kyle's latest business venture. A ground floor opportunity that just needed a little capital investment to really take off. $50,000. They actually expected me to hand over $50,000. Looking back, I realized they'd calculated exactly what to ask for. Not so much that it was impossible, but enough that it would hurt me significantly. They'd done their research on typical senior developer salaries. They knew exactly what they were doing. The worst part was remembering all the other times. Kyle's used car dealership idea 4 years ago that needed just $5,000 to start. I gave him $2,000 I could barely afford, never saw a penny back. The restaurant concept 3 years ago, just $3,000 for licensing fees. Never happened. The online dropshipping store, just $4,000 for inventory. No inventory ever materialized. Each time the amount increased. Each time the promises were grander. And each time nothing came of it except Kyle's excuses and Mom's defense of him. As I stood in my living room that day, staring at them, I realized nothing had changed since I was that teenager watching my college fund disappear. Except now I had something they wanted more than ever. The morning after I refused to give them money, my phone exploded with notifications. 27 text messages from Kyle, 14 from Mom, and 3 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize but had my hometown area code. Kyle's messages alternated between guilt-tripping and grandiose promises. I thought family was supposed to support each other. You'll regret not getting in on this when I'm making millions. Just a loan, I'll pay you back double in 6 months. Must be nice to have so much money you can turn your back on family. Moms were purely emotional warfare. I raised you better than this. After everything I've done for you. Kyle cried himself to sleep last night. Your father would be so disappointed in you. That last one was rich, considering she was the one who drove Dad away, or at least that's what I'd always assumed based on her bitter comments about him over the years. I silenced my phone and went to work trying to focus on the new project I'd been assigned as part of my promotion. 2 hours in, my desk phone rang, something that almost never happened since everyone used Slack or email. Madeline, it's Aunt Sophia. My stomach dropped. Aunt Sophia was Mom's older sister who lived a few towns over from Riverview. We weren't particularly close, but she'd always sent birthday cards with $20 when I was growing up. Your mother called me absolutely beside herself. She began, her tone accusatory. She said you've turned your back on Kyle when he needs help. Is that true? I took a deep breath and explained the situation. The unannounced visit, the demand. For $50,000. The history of failed ventures. There was a long pause on the line. $50,000. Aunt Sophia finally said, her tone completely different. Patricia told me it was $5,000. For a course to help Kyle finish his degree. And just like that, I realized Mom was working the family phones, telling different stories to different relatives. I wasn't just dealing with Mom and Kyle anymore. I was being painted as the villain to my entire extended family. Aunt Sophia's tone softened as we continued talking. Honey, have they done this before? I told her everything, the car dealership, the restaurant, the online store. How I'd given smaller amounts in the past that disappeared into thin air. How Kyle hadn't held a steady job since high school. I had no idea, she said quietly. Your mom always talks about Kyle's entrepreneurial spirit, I thought. That he was a budding businessman, that's what she wants everyone to think. By the end of the call, Aunt Sophia was firmly in my corner, the first family ally I'd had in years. But she also warned me that Mom was on a campaign, calling everyone from second cousins to my father's elderly aunt. After work, I met my best friend Rachel for dinner. We'd been friends since college, where we bonded over both being scholarship students working our way through school. They've got some nerve, Rachel said after hearing about the ambush. 50,000. Do they think you're Jeff Bezos? They saw the promotion and dollar signs lit up in their eyes, I said, pushing my food around my plate. The thing is, I can technically afford it. If I emptied my emergency fund and took a loan against my 401k, Rachel put her fork down hard. Madeline Mitchell, don't you dare. You worked too hard for that safety net. I know, I sighed. But the guilt is real. Mom did raise us alone after Dad left. And whose choice was that? Did she try to co-parent? Did she support your relationship with him? Or did she use you kids as pawns? I had no answer. The truth was, I knew almost nothing about my parents' separation. Mom's narrative abandoned wife, heroically raising children alone, was all I'd ever heard. The next day at work, I was getting coffee in the break room when Brandon, another developer, asked if I was okay. You seem distracted, he said. Everything all right with the new project? I gave him the sanitized version of what was happening, family asking for money after my promotion. To my surprise, his expression immediately darkened in recognition. Let me guess, he said. They never cared about your career before, but now suddenly they're super interested in your success. Exactly. How did you know? Same thing happened to me when I got my first big promotion. My cousin, who I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, suddenly had a business opportunity he needed investors for. There was something powerfully validating about knowing I wasn't alone. Brandon recommended a book about financial boundaries with family that had helped him navigate similar waters. That night, I lay awake running calculations in my head. The $50,000 would wipe out my emergency fund and then some. It had taken me 6 years of aggressive saving to build that safety net. 6 years of turning down trips with friends, living with roommates longer than I wanted, to buying store-brand everything and picking up freelance coding gigs on weekends. What if I lost my job? What if I had a medical emergency? What if the housing market crashed and I ended up underwater on my mortgage? The security I'd fought so hard for would vanish all for one of Kyle's schemes that was almost guaranteed to fail based on his track record. Around 3 a.m., I made a decision. I texted Mom, "Let's discuss this like adults. Dinner tomorrow at Rossetti's 7 p.m. Just the 3 of us." Rossetti's was a mid-range Italian restaurant, nice enough to have a real conversation without being so expensive that they'd accuse me of flaunting my money. Neutral territory. Mom's response came immediately despite the hour. "We'll be there. So glad you've come to your senses." I hadn't agreed to anything yet, but in Mom's mind, a meeting meant capitulation. The thought of disappointing her again made my stomach churn. But I reminded myself of Rachel's words. I'd worked too hard for my safety net to give it away. Rossetti's was busy for a Wednesday night. I arrived 15 minutes early to secure a corner table with some privacy. The hostess had just shown me to my seat when I saw Mom and Kyle walking through the door 10 minutes before our agreed meeting time. They were never early for anything. Clearly, they were eager for what they assumed would be a financial windfall. Maddie Mom air-kissed my cheek, while Kyle gave me an awkward side hug. You look tired, honey. Work must be so stressful. Translation. You look awful, and I'm going to point it out. We ordered drinks and appetizers, making stilted small talk about the weather and Mom's neighbor's new fence. I was just starting to think maybe we could have a rational conversation when Kyle pulled out a folder. So, about my business opportunity, he began sliding the folder toward me. I've put together some projections. I opened it to find printouts of cryptocurrency price charts and a crudely designed logo for something called Kyle Coin. You want to start your own cryptocurrency? I asked, trying to keep the alarm out of my voice. Not start invest, Kyle said, with the confidence of someone who had done approximately 15 minutes of internet research. There's this guy Brendan who's developed this amazing algorithm. He's offering early investors a chance to get in before it goes public. As a software developer who worked with actual algorithms daily, every red flag in my brain went up at once. I asked technical questions about the blockchain technology, the differentiation from established cryptocurrencies, and the security protocols. Kyle's answers were vague, rehearsed lines clearly fed to him by Brendan. Kyle, I said as gently as I could, this sounds like a classic cryptocurrency scam. These pump and dump schemes are everywhere. The early investors recruit others, the value artificially inflates, then the creators cash out and disappear, leaving everyone else with worthless digital tokens. Mom's face hardened. Just because you write computer codes doesn't mean you understand business, Madeline. Mom, this isn't about business. It's about basic cybersecurity and investment fraud. I literally work in this field. Kyle scoffed. Brendan said people wouldn't understand. He said there would be doubters who lack vision. Of course he did. That's what scammers say to preemptively discredit anyone who questions them. The conversation was deteriorating when a young woman with platinum blonde hair approached our table. Hey, babe, she said, sliding into the empty chair beside Kyle. Sorry I'm late. Kyle's face went through several emotions at once. Surprise, panic, then forced cheerfulness. Jessica, I didn't know you were coming. Clearly, this wasn't part of the plan. Jessica, apparently Kyle's girlfriend I'd never heard of, smiled at me. You must be Madeline. Kyle's told me all about his successful sister. Before I could respond, Mom jumped in with her warmest smile, the one she reserved for people she wanted to impress. Jessica, so glad you could join us. We're just discussing Madeline's investment in Kyle's exciting new business venture. What I blurted out. Mom, I haven't agreed to anything. Jessica's eyebrows rose. The cryptocurrency thing. That's still happening, I thought, after Brendan got arrested. Kyle kicked her under the table not subtly, and her sentence trailed off. The temperature at the table seemed to drop 10 degrees. Arrested, I repeated. It was a misunderstanding, Kyle said quickly. All cleared up now. Brendan's a visionary, and visionaries are always persecuted. Jessica looked confused. But your mom said you were starting a home renovation business. Now it was Mom's turn to look panicked. Well, Kyle has many talents. He's exploring several opportunities. In that moment, the pieces clicked together. Mom, what exactly have you been telling people about my money? She had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Just that you're helping Kyle with a small business loan. And how small would that be? I might have mentioned the 50,000 figure to a few people. My blood ran cold. You told people I already agreed to this. Well, I knew you would once you understood how important this is to our family. Our server chose that exact moment to arrive with our entrees, placing them awkwardly in the tense silence before retreating. I pushed my plate away, my appetite gone. Let me get this straight, I said, keeping my voice low to avoid a scene. You've already told our entire extended family that I'm giving Kyle $50,000 for a business that doesn't exist being run by a person who has apparently been arrested. Kyle slammed his hand on the table. You think you're so much better than us, don't you? With your fancy job and your fancy apartment. You've forgotten where you came from. I remember exactly where I came from, Kyle. I remember working 2 jobs in high school while you played video games. I remember paying my way through college while you dropped out. I remember sending money home when I could barely afford ramen. Jessica looked increasingly uncomfortable taking small bites of her pasta while glancing between us. We're your family, Mom hissed. Family takes care of each other. When has this family ever taken care of me? I asked, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. The question hung in the air. Neither of them had an answer. I think I should go, Jessica murmured, placing her napkin on the table. No, stay, I said. You should hear this too. Kyle, I love you because you're my brother, but I won't fund another failure. If you want to start a legitimate business with a solid plan, I'll help you find resources, connect you with mentors, even review your business plan. But I will not hand over my emergency fund for a crypto scam. Kyle stood up his chair, scraping loudly. Come on, Jess, Mom. My sister's too important for us now. Jessica hesitated, looking at me with what seemed like genuine regret before following Kyle. Mom stayed seated, her expression calculating. You know, she said quietly, I've already told everyone you're helping. The whole family knows. Think about how this makes you look. I don't care how it looks. I care about doing what's right. Your cousin Taylor's wedding is next month. Everyone will be there. How will you face them, knowing they all think you abandoned your family when we needed you? It was pure manipulation, but she knew my weak spots. I'd always craved the family's approval, the belonging I never quite felt. I'm sorry, Mom. My answer is still no. She gathered her purse, standing with dignity. You'll change your mind. You always were a people pleaser. As she walked away, I paid the bill for 4 barely touched meals and sat alone at the table feeling both hollow and somehow lighter. In the restaurant parking lot, gathering courage to drive home, I overheard familiar voices around the corner of the building. Curious, I moved closer. Dave just need to try another angle, Mom was saying. She's always been soft. Remember how we got the money for your car? Yeah, I just had to cry about how all my friends were leaving me behind. Kyle's laugh was harsh. Maybe Jessica could talk to her woman to woman. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. Jessica's voice was hesitant. She seemed really upset. Oh, please, Mom dismissed. Madeline's always been dramatic. She has more money than she knows what to do with. We just need to help her see that family comes first. I slipped away before they saw me, a cold certainty settling in my chest. This wasn't about family. This was about seeing me as an ATM. The coordinated attack began the next morning. My phone buzzed with a call from Uncle Pete, Mom's brother, who I hadn't spoken to in at least 3 years. Madeline, how's my favorite niece? I wasn't his favorite anything. He'd consistently forgotten my birthdays while sending Kyle elaborate gifts. What do you need, Uncle Pete? He chuckled nervously. Well, straight to the point, just like your mother. Listen, I heard about Kyle's business opportunity. Sounds exciting. So it began. Throughout the day, relatives I barely remembered called with thinly veiled suggestions about supporting family and remembering your roots. Cousin Dylan texted asking for my investment advisor's contact information for when Kyle's business takes off. Aunt Margaret emailed reminiscing about how I always shared your toys as a child and how giving seems to be in your nature. By Friday, the digital assault escalated. Mom created a Facebook group called Supporting Kyle's Future and added every single family member, including me. The cover photo was Kyle as a child, looking adorably hopeful in a paper hat from his one-day lemonade stand. The posts were masterfully crafted for maximum guilt. So proud of my son taking entrepreneurial initiative, thankful for supportive family members who believe in his vision. Translation: Madeline doesn't support her brother. Throwback to when little Maddie broke her piggy bank to help Kyle buy school supplies. Some things never change. Or do they? Attached was a clearly staged childhood photo I had no recollection of. The comments were worse, full of family members praising Kyle's ambition and making vague references to certain people who had forgotten family values. I muted the group, but couldn't bring myself to leave it entirely. That would just create more drama. Then came the unexpected house call. I opened my door Saturday morning to find cousin Tyler standing there, hands in pockets, looking uncomfortable. "Hey, Maddie, can I come in? Just want to talk." Against my better judgment, I let him in. We'd been close as kids before drifting apart in high school. He seemed genuinely concerned, sitting on my couch with a serious expression. "Look, I'm worried about the family situation. Mom, Aunt Patricia, is on a warpath. She's calling everyone." For a moment I thought I'd found another ally. "It's really not fair," he continued, and my hopes rose until he finished with, "Kyle has this amazing opportunity and he's family. 50 grand is nothing to you now." I showed him my door. The pressure intensified. Mom somehow got hold of a childhood photo album I thought was lost in their basement. She began posting edited, carefully selected photos, showing Kyle always supporting me and me always being difficult. There I was, refusing to smile in a family photo cropped to hide that I had the flu. Here was Kyle, with his arm around me, cropped to hide that he was actually reaching for a toy I was holding. The narrative she crafted was masterful. Ungrateful daughter abandons struggling family after they sacrificed everything for her success. The only break in the united front came from my younger cousin Amber, who private messaged me, "I see what they're doing to you. It's not right. Stay strong." Her support, though silent, meant everything. Meanwhile, Kyle took a different approach on his social media. Some people get a little money and forget who was there for them all along. Number toxic family members. Number know your worth. The comments section filled with sympathy from his friends and our relatives, none of whom knew he'd never worked a full week in his life. The crowning achievement came in the form of a Thanksgiving invitation from Mom 2 months early. "Annual family Thanksgiving at my place. Everyone, welcome." Note to Madeline: no need to bring a dish, just your checkbook if you still want to be considered family. She sent it to the entire extended family email list. The stress began affecting my work. I missed a morning meeting after finally falling asleep at 4 a.m. My code reviews came back with uncharacteristic errors. My boss Diana called me into her office after I missed a critical deadline on the project I'd been assigned after my promotion. "Madeline, this isn't like you. What's going on?" I gave her the bare minimum, family issues distracting me, and promised to do better. The understanding in her eyes almost broke me. "Take care of yourself," she said. "This project matters, but so do you." I left her office determined to get my professional life back on track, even as my personal life was imploding. I couldn't let my family drama cost me the career I'd worked so hard to build. Little did I know, they weren't done yet, not by a long shot. After a grueling day catching up on the work I'd fallen behind on, I trudged up to my apartment door, keys in hand, already imagining the glass of wine and hot bath waiting for me. I inserted my key, but the door was already unlocked. My heart stopped. I never leave my door unlocked. Cautiously pushing it open, I was met with the sight of Mom and Kyle sitting on my couch, looking through papers spread across my coffee table. My papers? What the hell are you doing in my apartment? I demanded, dropping my bag with a thud. They both jumped. Mom recovered first, smiling as if breaking into my home was perfectly normal. Maddie, you're home early. We were just tidying up a bit. Tidying up by going through my financial statements, I moved closer and saw my bank statements, 401k summary, and even my recent tax return laid out. How did you get in? Mom had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I kept the spare key you gave me when you moved in. I thought it might be nice to surprise you with dinner, but then we got here and realized we didn't know what you'd want, so we were just looking for takeout menus. The blatant lie hung in the air between us. In my file cabinet, in the locked drawer where I keep financial documents, Kyle stood up defiant. We're family. We shouldn't have secrets. Those aren't secrets, Kyle. That's my private financial information that you have absolutely no right to access. Mom gathered the papers into a messy pile, her movements jerky with indignation. Well, I wouldn't have had to resort to this if you'd just been honest about how much money you're really making. Senior developers at your company make well over 6 figures. You could easily help Kyle without feeling it. The violation of my privacy, my home, my boundaries, it was too much. Get out. My voice was low, dangerous. Get out right now. Don't you speak to me in that tone, young lady. Mom drew herself up. After everything I've done for you. What have you done for me, Mom? Really? Did you support my education, my career, my independence? No. You've only ever supported Kyle. That's not true. But her eyes slid away from mine. I raised you. You raised me to be Kyle's safety net. To feel guilty for any success I achieved. To believe I was only worthwhile if I was useful to the family. Kyle scoffed, rolling his eyes. Here we go with a victim routine. You always think you're better than us. With your fancy degree and your coding job. Some of us weren't born with your advantages. I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised even me. My advantages? Are you serious right now? We grew up in the same house, Kyle. We had the same opportunities. The difference is I worked for what I have. You're still waiting for handouts. Mom always had to be harder on you because you were so stubborn, Kyle shot back. I was easier to raise. She was harder on me because she expected me to be responsible while letting you off the hook for everything. And now, look, I'm still expected to clean up your messes. Mom stepped between us. That's enough, Madeline. I don't recognize the cold, selfish person you've become. I sacrificed everything for you children after your father abandoned us. Something snapped inside me. Did he abandon us, Mom, or did you drive him away? Because the older I get, the more I wonder. Her face went white. How dare you? How dare I question the narrative you've controlled my entire life? I've given Kyle money 3 times for his ventures. None of them materialized. Where did the money go, Mom? Because I'm starting to think it never went to business investments at all. Kyle's face flushed red. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? What happened to the car dealership, Kyle? Or the restaurant? Or the online store? Did any of them ever exist? Mom's voice went quiet, dangerous. We did what we had to do to survive. You have no idea the financial pressures of raising 2 children alone. Then enlighten me. Mom and Kyle exchanged a look, one I'd seen many times before when they were deciding how to handle me. Finally, Mom sighed dramatically. If you must know, yes, some of the money went to other expenses. Bills. Necessities. Kyle's community college tuition. Kyle dropped out after 1 semester. Because we needed the tuition money back to cover the mortgage that month. Your father's child support was always late, and sometimes I had to make difficult decisions. I shook my head trying to process this new information. So you lied to me about what the money was for. I knew you wouldn't help if I just asked for bill money. Because I was a broke college student myself, I was eating ramen for dinner while you were taking my money for bills. You should have been able to cover. Kyle stepped closer, his expression ugly. Not all of us can be perfect like you, Madeline. Some of us struggle. I struggled too, Kyle. I worked 2 jobs through high school. I worked through college. I lived with roommates until last year to save money. The difference is, I didn't expect anyone to bail me out. Mom sat heavily on my couch, her expression calculating. When she spoke, her voice had that martyred tone I knew so well. I never told you this, Madeline, but I used some of your student loan money for Kyle's senior year expenses. His graduation, his first car. The room seemed to tilt sideways. What? You were approved for more than your tuition. The excess was deposited to my account since you were still a minor when you applied. I was going to pay it back, but you never did. So I've been paying interest on loans that went to Kyle's car. Money I thought was for my education. The betrayal was physical, a knife twisting in my stomach. Everything I thought I knew about my college years, the loans I was still paying off, was a lie. Get out. I moved to the door, holding it open. Get out right now and give me back my key. Madeline, be reasonable. Out. I never yelled, but I was shouting now, my voice echoing in the hallway. Get out of my home. Kyle stormed past me, shoulder-checking me on the way. Mom followed more slowly, digging in her purse and reluctantly dropping my spare key on the entryway table. This isn't over, she said quietly. Family is forever, Madeline. It sounded more like a threat than a reassurance. The moment they left, I called a locksmith for an emergency lock change. While waiting, I went through every drawer and cabinet in my apartment looking for anything else they might have disturbed. My passport was still in my fireproof box. My laptop was password protected. But the violation of my space left me feeling unsafe in my own home. The next morning, I received an email from HR requesting a meeting. Confused, I arrived to find the head of HR, Joanna, looking uncomfortable. Madeline, we've received a complaint about your conduct. My conduct? What are you talking about? Someone has anonymously reported concerns about you sharing proprietary company information with family members to help with investment decisions. My blood ran cold. The timing wasn't coincidental. That's completely false. I would never do that. Joanna nodded, seeming relieved. That's what I told Diana. Your record here is spotless, and this came out of nowhere. But we have to investigate any allegations of insider trading or information leaks. I understand. I'll cooperate however I need to. As I left the meeting, a terrible thought occurred to me. If my family was willing to break into my apartment, go through my financial documents, and make false accusations to my workplace, what else were they capable of? Daniel, my apartment building's manager, caught me as I was checking my new locks that evening. Miss Mitchell, I thought you should know there was a young man asking about you at the front desk yesterday. Said he was your brother. When Maurice wouldn't let him up without your permission, he got angry. Started hanging around outside. We asked him to leave, but I've seen him drive by a few times since. A chill ran down my spine. Thank you for telling me, Daniel. And thank Maurice for following protocol. No problem. Just be careful, okay? Family disputes can get ugly. We've got security cameras, but still watch your back. Family disputes can get ugly. How had it come to this? When had my mother and brother become people I needed to protect myself from? I called Rachel that night, my voice breaking as I told her everything. Her response was immediate. Pack a bag. You're staying with me for a few days. I can't impose. This isn't a request, Madeline. They know where you live, they've already broken in once, and now they're hanging around outside. You're coming to my place until we figure out next steps. Too exhausted to argue, I threw some clothes and my laptop into a bag and went to Rachel's apartment across town. As I curled up on her guest bed that night, I felt simultaneously defeated and relieved. For the first time in weeks, I could sleep without wondering if someone would use a spare key to enter my home while I was vulnerable. Something had broken permanently in my family relationship. But maybe it had been broken all along, and I was only now seeing it clearly. The week at Rachel's gave me breathing room to think clearly for the first time since this nightmare began. She lived in a secure building with a doorman who had strict instructions not to allow my family up if they somehow tracked me there. I worked remotely, telling my team I had a plumbing emergency at my apartment, not entirely a lie as I couldn't safely go home. With physical safety temporarily secured, I could finally think about long-term strategy. Rachel's guest room became my war room post-it notes covering one wall as I mapped out the situation. You need professional help with this, Rachel said, bringing me coffee as I stared at my wall of notes. And I don't mean just legal advice. She was right. I made 2 appointments that day. One with a therapist specializing in family trauma, and one with a financial advisor. Dr. Winters, the therapist, had a calm office with muted colors and comfortable chairs. I poured out the whole sordid story while she listened, without judgment. What you're describing contains elements of financial abuse and emotional manipulation, she said when I finished. The family dynamics you grew up with, the golden child and scapegoat roles assigned to you and your brother, are common in dysfunctional families, but that doesn't make them healthy. But they're still my family, I said, voicing the conflict that had been tearing me apart. Am I wrong for not helping them? Madeline, setting boundaries isn't wrong. It's necessary for your well-being. And there's a significant difference between helping family and enabling harmful behavior. We talked about codependency, about how Mom had trained me from childhood to feel responsible for the family's financial stability, how Kyle had been taught to expect bailouts rather than consequences. Your mother is what we sometimes call a high-conflict personality, Dr. Winters explained. She's unlikely to respond to rational discussion because her emotional need to control the situation overrides logic. The best strategy with such individuals is minimal engagement while maintaining firm boundaries. I left the session with recommended reading on toxic family dynamics and a follow-up appointment for the following week. My meeting with Harold, the financial advisor, was equally enlightening. I see this more often than you'd think, he said, reviewing my financial documents. Successful young professionals suddenly finding relatives they haven't heard from in years, showing up with their hands out. Let's talk about protecting your assets. We discussed practical measures, changing my banking passwords, setting up 2-factor authentication on all accounts, placing a fraud alert on my credit report, and creating a document detailing all the money I'd previously given to Kyle with dates and promise purposes. And I strongly suggest you create a will, Harold added. Not because you're in any danger, but because it puts you in control of your legacy rather than defaulting to family inheritance if anything happened to you. That thought was sobering. Without a will, everything I'd worked for would automatically go to Mom and Kyle if I died. The idea of all my hard-earned money funding Kyle's scams after my death was intolerable. During this time, I also made a decision I'd been avoiding for years. I reached out to my father, William. We hadn't spoken since I was 19. When Mom found out he'd sent me a birthday card, and berated me for betraying her by having contact with him. I'd been so conditioned to see him as the villain in our family story that I'd cut off the tentative reconnection to keep peace. His number was still in my old contacts. When he answered, his voice was exactly as I remembered, deep, slightly hesitant. "Madeline, is that really you?" "Hi, Dad." "Yes, it's me." The conversation was awkward at first, years of distance creating a chasm between us. But as we talked, something shifted. He asked about my life, my job, my apartment, and he actually listened to the answers, asking follow-up questions that showed genuine interest. When I finally broached the subject of Mom and Kyle, his sigh was heavy with recognition. "I've been waiting for this call for years," he said. "I knew eventually you'd see through it all." "See through what?" "Your mother's manipulation. The way she uses people. I tried to protect you from it when you were young, but..." "What really happened between you two?" I asked, finally ready to hear his side of the story. "Mom always said you abandoned us." There was a long pause before he spoke again. "Madeline, I never wanted to turn you against your mother. That's why I've kept quiet all these years. But you're an adult now and you deserve the truth." The story he told turned my understanding of my childhood upside down. He hadn't abandoned us, he'd been forced out after discovering Mom's gambling problem. She'd emptied their joint accounts, maxed out credit cards in both their names, and taken loans from predatory lenders. I tried to get her help, but she refused. When I threatened to take control of our finances, she told me if I did, she'd make sure I never saw you kids again. She knew the courts favored mothers back then. "So you just left." I couldn't keep the accusation from my voice. "No, I tried to stay involved. I paid child support more than the court ordered. I sent birthday and Christmas gifts. I called every Sunday. But your mother would tell you I canceled visits or that gifts never arrived. Eventually, she changed your phone number and moved without telling me where. By the time I found you again, Kyle was telling me to stop bothering you both, that you didn't want me around. Kyle told you that he was 12. Your mother had him make the call." I can still hear his voice, trying to sound grown-up but clearly repeating words someone else had written. I remembered Kyle at 12, easily manipulated, desperate for Mom's approval. It wasn't hard to imagine him doing her bidding. "Why didn't you fight harder? Take her to court for visitation." "I did, Madeline. 3 times. But your mother would tell the judge that you were afraid of me, that I was unstable. She had the school counselor convinced I was abusive, so the counselor testified against me. After the 3rd attempt, my lawyer told me I was just traumatizing you kids with the constant court battles. So I backed off, hoping that when you were older, you'd reach out. Which was exactly what had happened when I turned 18 and found his birthday card with his number. The contact I'd cut off because Mom had made me feel disloyal. Dad, did Mom have a gambling problem when I was growing up?" His sharp intake of breath was answer enough. "You figured it out, haven't you?" "I'm starting to. The money I sent for Kyle's business ventures that never materialized. The constant financial crises that somehow never improved despite Mom having a steady job. Your mother's been fighting this addiction since before you were born. There would be periods of recovery, then relapse. It's why we were always struggling financially despite 2 decent incomes." The pieces clicked into terrible clarity. Kyle's business ventures were likely covers for Mom's gambling debts. The recent aggressive push for $50,000 suggested she was in deep again, deeper than ever before. "Does Kyle know?" I asked. "I don't know. He was too young to understand when I left, but he's an adult now. Either he knows and he's enabling her, or he's still being manipulated too." By the time we finished talking, 3 hours had passed, and I had a completely new understanding of my family history. Dad and I agreed to meet for lunch the following weekend, our first face-to-face meeting in over a decade. When I returned to my apartment a few days later, I did so with a new security system installed, all my locks changed, and a plan in place. Daniel, the building manager, had been alerted to never allow Mom or Kyle access to my unit, even for emergencies. The first day back at the office brought another shock. As I walked to my desk, I noticed a familiar face in the junior developers area, my cousin Tyler. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my voice low to avoid causing a scene. His smile was smug. "Got hired last week. Junior developer position opened up, and I've always been interested in coding." Tyler had never shown interest in computers beyond playing video games. His degree was in business administration, and as far as I knew, he had no programming experience whatsoever. "What a coincidence," I said, not bothering to hide my suspicion. "Just trying to follow in your successful footsteps, 'cause..." His grin didn't reach his eyes. Family helping family, right? I immediately went to Diana's office. "Did you know Tyler Mitchell is my cousin?" I asked without preamble. Diana frowned. "No, HR handles the initial hiring." "Why?" I explained the family situation briefly, including the anonymous complaint that had triggered the HR investigation. Diana's expression darkened. "That's a serious conflict of interest he should have disclosed. And if he's involved in making false accusations..." "I don't want to cause problems," I said quickly. "I just need you to be aware of the situation. I appreciate you telling me. I'll keep an eye on things." I didn't have to wait long. The following day, Brandon caught me in the break room. "Hey, that new guy Tyler, I found him going through your project files on the shared drive." When I asked what he was doing, he said he was just trying to learn from the best. But he was looking at your recent security protocol documentation, not exactly beginner material. My blood ran cold. That documentation contained proprietary information about Digital Sphere's clients. If it leaked, it would be catastrophic for the company and my career. I reported the incident to Diana and HR, who promised to investigate. 2 days later, Tyler was escorted from the building, his short employment terminated for violation of company confidentiality policies. The day after Tyler's firing a colleague, I barely knew Jasmine from the UX team stopped by my desk. "Hey, I heard about what happened with that new guy. Just wanted to say I've been there with toxic family. If you need someone to talk to who gets it, I'm around." It was such a simple gesture, but it nearly broke me. I'd been feeling so isolated, so alone in my struggle. Knowing there were others who understood, who had faced similar battles and survived, gave me hope. That evening, I received an anonymous email from a temporary address. "You should know they're still planning to access your accounts. Recorded conversation attached." The attached audio file contained a recording of Mom and Kyle discussing how they might get my banking passwords, with Kyle suggesting they try answers to security questions they might know from my childhood. "She always uses the same basic passwords and adds numbers," Kyle's voice said. Her first pet's name was Rusty, her elementary school was Lincoln, and her first car was a Honda Civic. I immediately changed all my passwords and security questions using random answers stored in a password manager rather than actual facts from my life. Who had sent the recording? The email address gave no clues, but the timing suggested someone close to Mom and Kyle who had become uncomfortable with their plans. The next day, Aunt Sophia called. "I've been thinking about everything you told me," she said without preamble. "And I need to tell you something. Patricia's been using Kyle to get money for years." I suspected, but I didn't want to believe it. "I know, Aunt Sophia. Dad told me about Mom's gambling." Her sharp intake of breath confirmed it. "William told you? Well, good. It's about time someone did. I've been telling her to get help for years, but she refuses to admit there's a problem. How bad is it now? Bad. She's been borrowing from everyone in the family. Your Uncle Robert refused last month, and suddenly she's telling everyone he made a pass at her 20 years ago. Classic Patricia, destroy anyone who stands in her way. Uncle Robert had always been kind to me at family gatherings, bringing books he thought I'd enjoy. The idea that Mom would fabricate such allegations to punish him for not funding her addiction made me sick. I've been defending you to the family, Aunt Sophia continued. Some are starting to see through Patricia's manipulation, but others are too far under her spell. Another ally. Between Rachel, Dad, Aunt Sophia, and my new workplace supporters, I was building a network of people who understood what I was facing. People who could validate my experiences when Mom's gaslighting made me doubt my own memories. Then came the most unexpected ally of all. Kyle's girlfriend Jessica sent a text. Can we need to talk about Kyle and your mom? Just broke up with him. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our neighborhoods. Jessica looked different than she had at the disastrous dinner-less makeup, simpler clothes, eyes clear and determined. I'm done, she said without preamble. 3 years I've watched this dysfunction believing Kyle would change. He won't, not while your mom's got him convinced he's entitled to your money. Over the next hour, she detailed what she'd seen Mom and Kyle discussing strategies to guilt me. Kyle practicing spontaneous emotional outbursts designed to manipulate Mom, coaching him on what to say to relatives about me. The cryptocurrency thing was the last straw, Jessica said. Kyle knows it's a scam. Brendan literally told them he guarantees returns because he controls when to cash out. That's the definition of a Ponzi scheme. Why are you telling me this? I asked, still wary. She looked down at her coffee. Because I watched my mom do the same thing to my older sister. Pitted us against each other, favored me, used my sister until there was nothing left to take. Now, my sister won't speak to either of us, and I don't blame her. Her eyes met mine. I don't want to be part of that cycle anymore. By the end of my strategic retreat, I had gathered intelligence, secured my finances, installed new security measures, reconnected with Dad, and gained unexpected allies. I was ready to face whatever came next, which turned out to be good timing because Mom's next move was something I never could have anticipated. My first day back at work after taking personal time was surreal. Colleagues who had never given me a second glance now watched with barely concealed curiosity. The rumors about Tyler's firing had clearly spread, though thankfully the full family drama remained private. I was catching up on emails when Diana stopped by my desk. Hey, got a minute? There's someone I'd like you to meet. I followed her to a conference room where a man in his early 30s sat reviewing documents. Madeline, this is Tyler's hiring manager, Jeff, from HR. Jeff, this is Madeline Mitchell. Jeff stood to shake my hand, looking deeply uncomfortable. Miss Mitchell, I owe you an apology. When we hired your cousin, we had no idea about the conflict of interest. How did he get hired with no programming experience? I asked. Jeff and Diana exchanged looks. That's what we wanted to discuss, Diana said. Tyler had a recommendation from a board member, Martin Davis. The name hit me like a physical blow. Martin Davis was married to my mother's cousin Elaine. I'd met him precisely once at a family wedding years ago. He's a distant relative by marriage, I explained. I barely know him. Well, he apparently knows you, Jeff said. Or at least he thinks he does. He told the hiring committee that you specifically mentioned wanting to mentor family members in the industry. I shook my head bewildered. I've never said anything remotely like that. Diana's expression was grim. We're dealing with a situation. Martin's been informed about the security breach attempt. But Madeline, I need to know, Is there anyone else in your family who might try to infiltrate digital sphere? The question was asked gently, but the implication was clear. My family drama was now a security risk for the entire company. No one else has any connection to tech, I assured her. And I've never discussed company specifics with any relatives. After they left, I sat at my desk feeling utterly violated. It wasn't enough that my family was attacking me personally. Now they were threatening my professional reputation and company security. How far would they go? The answer came sooner than I expected. While coding that afternoon, I noticed a familiar username in our project management system bsmith93. Brandon Smith, my coworker, who had warned me about Tyler. He'd assigned himself to review some of my recent code. Nothing unusual about that, except he'd never reviewed my work before. Curious, I stopped by his desk. Hey, saw you're reviewing the API authentication update. Need any clarification? Brandon looked up, genuinely confused. What? I'm not reviewing that. I'm still working on the database migration. A chill ran down my spine. Someone using your account assigned themselves to my code review about an hour ago. His face paled. He immediately checked his account activity and discovered a login from an unfamiliar IP address. Someone hacked my credentials, he said, already picking up his phone to call IT security. How did they know to target me specifically? The answer came to me in a flash. Because you were the one who caught Tyler accessing my files. IT security locked down Brandon's account and began a system-wide security audit. By the end of the day, they'd traced the breach to a phishing email, sent to Brandon's personal account, an elaborate fake inviting him to a coding conference, with a registration link that harvested his credentials. The level of sophistication was shocking. This wasn't just Mom and Kyle anymore, they had help. Professional help. As I was processing this latest attack, Jasmine from UX approached my desk. Hey, she said quietly. Can I talk to you privately? We found an empty meeting room and Jasmine closed the door. I overheard something I think you should know. I was at Lakeside Bar last night. It's where a lot of tech people hang out. There was a guy at the next table offering money for information about Digital Sphere's security protocols, specifically your projects. My heart raced. Did you see who it was? No, but I heard him on the phone later. He called someone Mom and said something about getting leverage over Madeline. Kyle. It had to be. Jasmine, would you be willing to tell this to our security team? This goes beyond family drama now. She nodded without hesitation. Already scheduled for tomorrow morning. My sister went through something similar with her ex-husband trying to sabotage her career. I'm not letting that happen to someone else. I was touched by her willingness to get involved. Thank you. Really. Hey us, women in tech have to stick together, right? The bros are bad enough without adding vindictive relatives to the mix. Her casual solidarity nearly brought me to tears. Later that evening, I received an anonymous email containing an audio file. With trepidation, I played it. Don't care what it takes, Mom's voice said. Find something we can use. Everyone has skeletons. What if she doesn't? Kyle asked. Then make something up. Plant something on her computer if you have to. We need access to those accounts before the recording cut off. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type an email to Diana and our security team forwarding the recording. This was beyond family drama, beyond emotional manipulation. They were actively trying to sabotage my career, possibly commit fraud, and potentially harm the company. The next morning, a company-wide email announced enhanced security protocols without mentioning me specifically. Diana stopped by my desk. We're taking this extremely seriously, she assured me. Legal is looking into a restraining order on behalf of the company. This isn't just about you anymore, though we're obviously concerned for your personal safety as well. I felt simultaneously guilty for bringing this trouble to my workplace and grateful for their support. That afternoon, I received a surprising visitor at the office. Aunt Sophia had driven 2 hours to see me in person. I couldn't say this over the phone, she explained as we sat in a nearby cafe. Patricia is completely out of control. The family is splitting into factions. Some believe her lies about you, but others are starting to see the pattern. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were bank statements and loan documents, all in Mom's name, all showing massive debt. How did you get these? I asked, flipping through papers showing credit card debt, personal loans, and what appeared to be loan shark agreements with exorbitant interest rates. Your mother asked me to co-sign a loan last year. I refused, but I got suspicious and did some digging. She's in deep, Madeline. The gambling has taken over completely. And Kyle. Does he know? Aunt Sophia's expression was pained. Kyle has been her enabler for years. At first, I think she manipulated him like she did everyone else. But now he's as bad as she is. They're a team. The realization hurt more than I expected. Some part of me had still been holding on to hope that Kyle was just a victim of Mom's manipulation, that my little brother was still in there somewhere. There's more, Aunt Sophia continued. Patricia's been telling the family she needs the money for Kyle's medical bills, that he has cancer. What the absurdity of the lie would have been laughable if it weren't so horrifying. Supposedly, it's a rare form that requires specialized treatment insurance won't cover. She's collected thousands from relatives, including your great-aunt Edith, who's on a fixed income. My shock turned to anger. Cancer. They were exploiting people's compassion with fake cancer claims. We need to expose this, I said. The family needs to know they're being scammed. That's why I'm here. Several of us are planning an intervention. Your Uncle Robert, me, your cousin Rebecca, a few others who've seen through the manipulation. But we need your help. My help. After everything they've done, you want me to help them. Not help them. Help us stop them before they drain every penny from the family and destroy more relationships. I thought about all the people being hurt, not just me, but elderly relatives on fixed incomes, cousins with their own families struggling to make ends meet, all giving money to feed Mom's addiction under false pretenses. What do you need me to do? We're gathering evidence. Bank statements, communications, witnesses to the lies. We want to present it all at once as a united front. Show Patricia and Kyle that the manipulation stops now. It was the first time I'd felt hopeful in weeks, the idea that I wasn't fighting this battle alone, that others saw the truth too. That evening brought another unexpected ally. I opened my door to find Kyle's now ex-girlfriend Jessica standing there looking nervous. Can I come in? I brought these. She held up a flash drive. It's everything recorded. Conversations, photos of gambling, receipts, texts between Kyle and your mom planning how to get money from you and others. I've been collecting evidence for months, ever since I realized what they were doing. Why didn't you leave sooner? I asked as she stepped inside. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. I loved him. Or I thought I did. I kept hoping he'd choose me over all this dysfunction. Stupid, right? Not stupid. Human. We spent the next hour going through the files she'd brought. There was Kyle on audio coaching Tyler on how to access my work files. Mom texting Kyle strategies for manipulating family members. Photos of casino receipts and online gambling transactions that aligned perfectly with the timing of Kyle's supposed business ventures. There's something else you should know, Jessica said quietly. Kyle's been recording your conversations. Anytime you talk in person, he has his phone recording. They're looking for anything they can use against you. The violation was staggering. Does he do that to everyone? Just you. Your mom is obsessed with finding your weakness, as she calls it. As Jessica was leaving, she paused at the door. I know it's not my place, but get a good lawyer, Madeline. These people aren't going to stop until they're forced to. The next day, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize with the subject line, Your mother, Patricia. You don't know me, but I'm Rebecca Patricia's sister. Sophia told me what's happening with you. I cut contact with Patricia 5 years ago for similar reasons. Financial manipulation lies playing family members against each other. I have documentation of loans she never repaid, plus evidence of how she spread rumors about me when I refused to keep funding her. If it helps your case, it's yours. Another ally emerged in the form of my former college roommate Alicia, now a practicing attorney. Family law isn't my specialty, she said when I called her, but I can definitely advise you on harassment and fraud issues. And I know people who can help with restraining orders if it comes to that. The network of support I'd built was growing stronger each day. People who had seen through the manipulation, who had experienced it themselves, who understood what I was facing and were willing to stand beside me. It was time to bring this all to a head, to confront the toxic dynamics that had controlled my life for too long. With my newfound allies and mountain of evidence, I was finally ready to face my family. The family intervention was set for Saturday at Uncle Robert's house, neutral territory, far from both my apartment and Mom's home. In the days leading up to it, I barely slept rehearsing what I would say, imagining every possible scenario. Aunt Sophia had coordinated everything, inviting key family members who had either been victimized by Mom's schemes or had witnessed the manipulation firsthand. Uncle Robert, Dad, Aunt Rebecca, Cousin Amber, and a few others had confirmed they would be there to form a united front. The plan was simple but terrifying: confront Mom and Kyle with evidence of their manipulation, financial abuse, and lies. Then present them with two options: get professional help or face family-wide consequences, including potential legal action for fraud. I arrived early, clutching a folder containing printouts of financial records documenting the money I'd given Kyle over the years, emails promising repayment, and evidence of the harassment campaign against me. Each document was a painful reminder of years of manipulation, but also proof that I wasn't crazy, that the abuse had been real. Dad arrived next, giving me an awkward but heartfelt hug. We'd had lunch twice since our phone calls, slowly rebuilding a relationship that had been sabotaged for decades. You sure you want to do this? He asked quietly. I'm not sure about anything, I admitted. But it has to stop somewhere. Uncle Robert was setting out coffee and water, no alcohol by design. No one needs clouded judgment today, he said. Aunt Rebecca arrived with her husband, followed by Aunt Sophia, Cousin Amber, and Jessica, who had been invited at my request. Each person carried their own folder of evidence, a paper trail of broken promises and financial exploitation. At exactly 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. Mom entered first, her face a mask of concerned confusion that I now recognized as completely artificial. Kyle followed, his expression shifting from defiant to uncertain as he registered how many people were present. What's this about? Mom asked, her voice catching with practiced vulnerability. Sophia just said the family needed to talk. Sit down, Patricia, Uncle Robert said firmly. You too, Kyle. We have a lot to discuss. They sat on the couch, Mom already positioning herself physically as the victim's shoulders hunched, hands clasped in her lap. Is this an intervention? Kyle asked with a nervous laugh. Because nobody here is on drugs. No, Aunt Sophia said. This is about the gambling, the lies, and the financial manipulation. Mom's face hardened for a split second before the victim mask slipped back into place. I don't know what you're talking about. I opened my folder and placed the first document on the coffee table, a bank statement, showing withdrawals that aligned perfectly with Kyle's business venture requests. This is about the money I gave Kyle for the car dealership that never existed, I said, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. And the restaurant. And the online store. Money that actually went to cover gambling debts. That's ridiculous, Mom scoffed. Kyle's ventures had setbacks, that's all. Business is risky. Uncle Robert placed his own documents on the table loans to Mom that were never repaid with her texts, promising the money was for Kyle's business, but casino receipts showing where it actually went. One by one, family members added their evidence to the growing pile. Aunt Rebecca's documentation of character assassination campaigns against family members who refused to give money. Jessica's recorded conversations of Kyle and Mom planning how to manipulate me. Dad's court records showing Mom's systematic effort to alienate him from his children. Kyle's face grew increasingly pale as the evidence mounted. Mom's expression cycled between faux confusion, righteous indignation, and when she thought no one was looking directly at her cold calculation. You're all ganging up on us, she finally said, tears appearing on cue. After everything I've done for this family, what exactly have you done? Patricia Aunt Sophia asked. Besides, take advantage of everyone's goodwill. Besides, use your own children as pawns. I raised those children alone after William abandoned us, Mom cried, pointing at Dad. That's a lie. And you know it, Dad said quietly. I never abandoned anyone. You drove me away and then systematically cut me off from my kids. You're believing him over me, Mom turned to me, her expression wounded. Your own mother. I believe the evidence I said. The court records. The consistent pattern over decades. The fact that you used my student loan money for Kyle without telling me. Kyle's head snapped up. Wait, what? What student loan money? For the first time, Mom looked genuinely flustered. Kyle, don't listen to these lies. Is that true? Kyle demanded, turning to Mom. Did you take Madeline's student loan money for me? The momentary crack in their united front gave me hope that perhaps Kyle wasn't completely lost to Mom's manipulation. Your graduation expenses your first car that was all supposed to be my college money, I told him. Money I've been paying interest on for years. Kyle looked sick. You told me that was from Dad's family inheritance. You said, it doesn't matter what I said. Mom snapped momentarily, dropping the victim act as her control slipped. Everything I did was for this family. No, Uncle Robert said firmly. Everything you did was to feed your addiction while maintaining control over everyone around you. Mom stood up, outrage replacing the wounded act. I don't have to listen to this. Kyle, we're leaving. Kyle didn't move. He was staring at the pile of evidence, particularly a casino receipt dated the same day he'd called me in tears, saying he needed money for his investor meeting attire. You said that was for my suit, he said quietly. You swore to me. Kyle, these people are trying to turn you against me, Mom said, her voice taking on a desperate edge. After everything I've sacrificed for you, stop saying that the force of Kyle's outburst surprised everyone, including himself. What exactly did you sacrifice? All I'm seeing is evidence that you took from everyone, including me. It was the first crack in Kyle's loyalty, and Mom recognized the danger immediately. Fine, she said, her voice suddenly cold. You want to air all the family's dirty laundry. Let's talk about how Madeline has always been jealous of you. How she's trying to tear this family apart because she thinks she's better than us now. This isn't about Madeline, Aunt Sophia interrupted. This is about your behavior, Patricia. The lies, the manipulation, the gambling that's gotten completely out of control. My finances are none of your business, Mom hissed. They became our business when you started scamming family members to fund your addiction, Uncle Robert countered. When you started using Kyle to manipulate Madeline. When you tried to sabotage Madeline's career. Kyle's head snapped up at that. What I never tried to sabotage. Tyler at my company, the hacking attempts, the anonymous complaints to HR I listed off. You're going to sit there and deny involvement in any of that. Kyle's expression was genuinely confused. I don't know what you're talking about. All eyes turned to Mom, whose face had gone completely still, the mask finally dropping to reveal the calculating person beneath. Patricia, Dad prompted. Care to explain? Mom's laugh was harsh, unfamiliar. You all think you're so clever with your little intervention. You have no idea what I'm capable of. The naked hostility in her voice sent a chill through the room. This wasn't the manipulative mother. I knew this was someone else entirely, someone who had been hiding behind a carefully constructed facade my entire life. Are you threatening us? Uncle Robert asked quietly. I'm stating a fact, Mom replied, gathering her purse. Kyle, we're leaving. Now. Kyle stood but hesitated. Mom, I need to know. Did you really use Madeline's loan money for me? Oh, yes, Kyle. Yes. Madeline had scholarships. You needed the money more. I didn't have full scholarships, I said. I worked 2 jobs to make up the difference. You were always so capable, Mom dismissed. Kyle needed extra support. Support is one thing, Dad interjected. Using one child's resources to fund the other is something else entirely. Kyle looked between Mom and me, genuine confusion on his face. All these years you told me Madeline was the favorite, that she got everything handed to her while I had to struggle. Because she would have lorded it over you otherwise, Mom said dismissively. I was protecting your self-esteem. By lying to me, by making me resent my sister for advantages she never actually had. Mom's patience visibly snapped. Enough, I'm not standing here being judged by people who've never had to make the hard decisions I've made. Kyle, let's go. She stormed toward the door. Kyle stood frozen for a moment, then followed but stopped at the threshold, turning back to look at me. I need to think, he said quietly. I need to think about all this. After they left the room, exhaled collectively. Aunt Sophia passed around the coffee that had gone untouched during the confrontation. Well, Uncle Robert said after a long silence. That went about as well as could be expected. She didn't admit anything I pointed out. She didn't have to, Dad replied. Her reaction said everything. And Kyle's starting to see through the manipulation. That's something I honestly didn't expect. We spent the next hour discussing next steps. Uncle Robert would contact the family members who had given money under false pretenses, particularly those told about Kyle's fictitious cancer. Aunt Rebecca would reach out to a gambling addiction counselor she knew. Dad and I would consult with Alicia about legal options regarding the harassment and fraud. What about the family Thanksgiving next month? Cousin Amber asked. Mom's already RSVP'd for us. I'll host an alternative gathering, Aunt Sophia offered. Anyone who wants to come to a drama-free holiday is welcome. As people began to leave, each one hugged me awkward, but sincere embraces that communicated support more powerfully than words. Uncle Robert was the last to leave besides Dad. You know she'll retaliate, he warned me. Patricia doesn't give up control easily. I know, I said. But at least now I'm not facing her alone. He squeezed my shoulder. No, you're certainly not. Dad and I left together, walking to our cars in companionable silence. I'm proud of you, he finally said. Standing up to her took courage. I had good examples, I replied, thinking of how he'd attempted to shield us from her manipulation. How Aunt Sophia and Uncle Robert had been quietly supporting family members all along. As I drove home, I felt lighter than I had in months, maybe years. The confrontation hadn't magically solved everything, but the truth was finally out in the open. The family power dynamics had shifted irrevocably. No more secrets, no more manipulation in the shadows. Mom might not change. Kyle might choose to stay in her toxic orbit. But I had broken free, and I wasn't alone. The storm wasn't over. In fact, I suspected the worst might be yet to come, but for the first time, I truly believed I could weather it. 6 months after the family confrontation, I stood in front of a mirror, adjusting my blazer before heading to work. The woman looking back at me seemed different, stronger, calmer, with clear eyes that no longer held the shadow of constant anxiety. So much had changed, both professionally and personally. At Digital Sphere, my work had not only recovered but thrived. The API security protocol I'd developed had been implemented company-wide, earning me recognition from the executive team. 2 weeks ago, Diana had called me into her office to offer me a promotion to lead security developer, a significant step up that came with both greater responsibility and a substantial raise. You've shown extraordinary resilience and professionalism during a difficult time, Diana had said. Those are leadership qualities we value as much as technical skills. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very family crisis that had threatened my career had ultimately showcased strengths I might never have discovered otherwise. My personal life had undergone equally significant transformations. The most immediate change had been establishing clear, non-negotiable boundaries with my family. Mom had predictably lashed out after the intervention, alternating between vicious attacks and tearful pleas for forgiveness. I had responded to neither, maintaining what Dr. Winters called therapeutic distance. All communication went through my lawyer, Alicia, who had agreed to represent me officially after the confrontation. The financial boundaries were equally firm. No more money, not for emergencies, not for business opportunities, not for anything. I had made one exception. I offered to pay for family therapy sessions and gambling addiction treatment for Mom. She had initially refused, but 3 months ago, after hitting what she called rock bottom, she had finally agreed to enter a treatment program. I wasn't naive enough to believe one program would fix decades of addiction and manipulation, but it was a start. Whether it led to genuine reconciliation remained to be seen, but for the first time, Mom was facing her demons instead of expecting others to accommodate them. Kyle's journey had been more complicated. After the confrontation, he had disappeared for weeks, not responding to calls or texts from anyone in the family. When he finally resurfaced, it was with a series of revelations that shocked even those of us who thought we understood the situation. I didn't know the extent of it. He had told me during our first one-on-one meeting in a neutral coffee shop. I knew Mom gambled, but she convinced me it was just occasional for fun. She told me you were the problem, that you were selfish, that you looked down on us. I believed her because it was easier than facing the truth. The hardest part for Kyle had been acknowledging his own role in the manipulation. He had been both victim and perpetrator, manipulated by Mom while helping her manipulate others. I don't expect forgiveness, he had said, unable to meet my eyes. But I am sorry, Madeline. So damn sorry. Our relationship was still fragile, a tentative rebuilding that might take years or might never fully recover. But Kyle had moved out of Mom's house, found a job at a warehouse, and was attending both family therapy sessions and Al-Anon meetings for families of addicts. Small steps, but in the right direction. My relationship with the extended family had undergone its own healing. Aunt Sophia and Uncle Robert had become fixtures in my life, calling regularly and including me in family gatherings. The alternative Thanksgiving they had hosted had been surprisingly well attended, with many relatives choosing the drama-free option over Mom's traditional guilt fest. Some family members still sided with Mom, unable or unwilling to see through the manipulation. I had made peace with that reality. Not everyone would understand my boundaries, and that was okay. Perhaps the most meaningful relationship to emerge from the wreckage was with my father. After decades of separation, we were slowly getting to know each other as adults. Weekend lunches had expanded to include occasional dinners, movies, and even a day trip to a nearby lake. The relationship wasn't without awkwardness. Too many lost years lay between us for instant comfort, but it was genuine in a way few of my family relationships had ever been. As for my apartment, I had made security changes beyond new locks. A proper security system with cameras. A doorman building. No spare keys in anyone's possession but mine. The physical barriers reflected the emotional ones I'd established, not walls to shut people out completely, but healthy boundaries to ensure that those who entered did so with respect. Dr. Winters had helped me understand that boundaries weren't selfish, they were necessary for healthy relationships. Think of boundaries like the walls of a house, she had explained. Without them, you don't have a home. You have an exposed piece of land where anyone can trample through. One unexpected outcome of my ordeal had been finding community with others who had survived similar family dynamics. Through Dr. Winters, I had joined a support group for adult children of parents with addiction issues. The validation of hearing others describe experiences so similar to mine had been profoundly healing. "You're not alone in this, Grace," a woman in my support group had told me during my first meeting. "And you're not crazy for protecting yourself." Those words had become something of a mantra during difficult moments. Perhaps the most powerful change had been internal, the gradual unraveling of toxic beliefs I'd absorbed throughout childhood. The belief that I was responsible for my family's financial stability, the belief that setting boundaries was selfish, the belief that my worth was tied to my usefulness to others. These thought patterns hadn't disappeared overnight. They still surfaced, occasionally triggering guilt or doubt. But now I recognize them for what they were: echoes of manipulation, not truth. The biggest test of my new boundaries had come last month when I received an invitation to Cousin Taylor's wedding. I had decided to attend, despite knowing Mom would be there, my first time seeing her in person since the confrontation. The encounter had been brief but revealing. Mom had approached me during the reception, her expression carefully neutral. "You look well," she had said, assessing my appearance in the way she always had, looking for flaws to point out. "Thank you. I am well. The family misses you at Sunday dinners." The subtle guilt trip was so familiar, it almost made me smile. "I'm having dinner with Aunt Sophia and Uncle Robert next weekend. You're welcome to join us." She had blinked, surprised by my calm response. "Perhaps, if my treatment schedule allows." A small exchange, but significant. No tears, no accusations, no manipulation that worked. Just two adults navigating a complex relationship with newly established boundaries. In my most honest moments, I acknowledged that full reconciliation with Mom might never happen. She might never truly acknowledge the harm she had caused or make genuine amends. But my healing didn't depend on her actions anymore, only my own. One decision I was particularly proud of was creating an education fund for Cousin Amber, who was preparing for college next year. The fund wasn't large, just enough to help with books and some expenses, but it represented something important to me, using my financial stability to support others in healthy ways on my own terms. I had learned that generosity wasn't measured by how much you gave when guilted or manipulated into giving. True generosity came from free choice, from giving what you could while maintaining your own well-being. As I finished getting ready for work, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Brunch tomorrow. with the crew Brandon and Jasmine are in. I smiled thinking of the unexpected friendships that had emerged from this difficult chapter. Brandon, who had stood by me during the workplace drama. Jasmine, who had risked her own comfort to warn me about Kyle's schemes. Rachel, my rock throughout it all. Along with Dad, Aunt Sophia, Uncle Robert, and my support group, they formed the chosen family I had built around myself. People who respected boundaries, who gave without expecting control in return. The road to healing wasn't complete, it might never be. Family trauma leaves deep imprints that require ongoing attention and care. But for the first time in my life, I was moving forward unburdened by toxic obligations, secure in the knowledge that I could build healthy relationships while protecting my hard-earned stability. Looking back at how far I'd come since that fateful day when Mom and Kyle showed up at my door demanding money, I felt something I hadn't expected: gratitude. Not for the pain or manipulation, but for the strength I'd discovered in myself, the authentic relationships I'd built, and the clarity I'd gained about what truly matters in life. Family is important, but not at the expense of your soul. Money can provide security, but not if it's used as a tool for control. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to say no when a boundary is crossed. These were the lessons I carried forward as I closed my apartment door behind me and stepped into the bright possibility of a new day. What difficult boundaries have you had to set with people in your life? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Remember that establishing healthy boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for your well-being and for creating authentic relationships. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life stories about navigating complicated family dynamics. And if you know someone struggling with similar challenges, share this video. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in our experiences is the first step toward healing. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you deserve relationships that honor your worth, not just your usefulness. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video.